Hobson, do you mind opening your camera so we can see that everything is working? Wonderful. So, hello again, everybody. I'm gonna let everybody in a minute. I see that we already have 20 people in the waiting room, so I'm gonna let everybody in once we start, which would be in 1 minute. I just wanted to let. Okay. So, hello everybody, welcome. Welcome to our first webinar. We're gonna give it another 2 minutes for people who are still joining us, and then we're gonna start. So take another minute. That would be a great time to go grab something to drink or anything else, and we're gonna start very soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of us at the Sustainable Fashion Consumption Research Network and at Yale Center for Business and Environment, saying that we are very, very excited to have our first webinar out of the webinar series. And our first webinar, as you know, is about secondhand trade in Ghana and its implications. So without further ado, I want to start. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for being here. I'm really happy to bring together people that I've met through my work in Ghana, from researchers, policy journalists, and practitioners, to think together about secondhand clothing and what it actually means on the ground. So my first question is for everybody joining us, for everybody in this webinar, which is Dr. Anika Kozlowski, Judith Akoto, Mike Canaro, Arpoto Binkley, and myself, of course. And Hobson, of course, from Ghana EPA. Thank you. So I want to start with my first question. Please just present yourself. Let me start with a quick round. Who you are and how you connected to this topic. Please briefly introduce yourself, who you are, your work, how are you connected to the secondhand trade clothing in Ghana, and basically why you're sitting with us this morning. So, Anika, I think we can start with you and then go across the room. Anika?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anika Kozlowski. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My work focuses on sustainable fashion systems, textile waste, and secondhand clothing networks. So I study how clothes move through reuse, resale, sorting, and disposal systems, and how those systems are shaped by broader infrastructure, economic, and policy structures. So my interest comes from looking beyond the consumer-facing story of donation and resale to the infrastructures and inequalities that sit behind it. And I spent some time in Ghana just essentially following the path of secondhand clothes from North America and to some of the bigger trading places and destinations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Judith.
Okay, hi, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Metal. It's a pleasure to be a part of this important conversation. So my name is Judith Akoto. I am a sustainability researcher and advocate, working at the intersection of circular economy, sustainable fashion, and policy. My work focuses currently on the global secondhand clothing trade and textile waste. So looking more at post-consumer waste aspect of the trade, particularly in Ghana. So I examine where where I examine how global fashion flows translate into local environments and policy challenges. I'm also involved with the research and policy work with the landfills and landmarks, where we focus on bringing visibility to downstream textile systems, especially what happens to clothing after it enters the market in Ghana, and how that can inform more accountable and effective circular economy solutions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mike, let's continue with you.
Okay, hello to everybody. My name is Mike Anane, and I am an environmental journalist and also a laureate of the United Nations Environment Program, Global 500 Roll of Honor. Over the years, I have been documenting, investigating all these environmental issues, their impacts, particularly the waste trade. I've done gold, impacts of gold, I've done the shark fin trade, and all that. But lately, I've been doing electronic waste, textile waste. So that's how come I am here today, to share my thoughts with you. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you with us today.
Right.
Mr. Binkley, let's continue with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Atobrah Binkley. I'm the General Secretary of the Dealers Association in Ghana, Tantamanto, specifically where the trade hub is. Ghana Youth Clothing Dealers Association supports responsible reuse, advancing the circular economy and providing affordable quality clothing for the people of Ghana. Ghana, the association also represents the interests and livelihood of many Ghanaians, like the importers, retailers, and the workers across the entire second-hand clothing value chain in Ghana. So approximately Ghana, we have about 2 million people who are directly into the second-hand clothing trade. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Hobson from Ghana EPA.
All right, good afternoon to you. My name is Hobson Agyapong with the Environmental Protection Authority, specifically with the Intersectorial and Sustainability Department. It used to be there, we used to call it ISN, and now we have added a sustainability aspect to be able to address the current mandate given to us with the passage of the Act 1124, that is the Environmental Protection Act. And our job, even though we know there are some livelihood support when it comes to secondhand clothing, it is serving a very good economic purpose. But of course, we have identified an environmental, issues associated with it. And that is what we want to work together to address. So I'll be sharing my knowledge on regulation and the legal framework when it comes to circular economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, and just as a way of introduction, I know that many of you knows who I am, but I'm still going to present myself. My name is Meital Peleg Mizrahi. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Economics here at Yale University, and also a member of the executive board of the Sustainable Fashion Consumption Research Network. I've been researching secondhand trade and consumer behavior for the last decade, give or so, and I've been focusing on Ghana for the last 2-3 years. So a lot of the people that we're hosting today helped me a lot during my research. So thank you again, and thank you for being here. I want to start with my first question directed to you, Anika. Just to set the stage, from your research, Anika, what does Ghana reveals about how global clothing flows actually work? How does it look today, and what changes did you saw in recent years?
Yeah, I think it first and foremost is that it's extremely complex and nuanced, and we need to understand that it's so important to have all players and stakeholders at the table when we talk about the subject, because Places like Ghana really make visible what the global system prefers to keep invisible. It shows how secondhand clothes are not just charitable or circular flows, but these are also trade systems that are shaped by overproduction, uneven value distribution, and waste displacement. Policy in economics play a huge role in what happens and how these clothes move around. What arrives in Ghana is not just simply clothing, it's a mixed stream of value and burden. There are unusable garments, usable garments, unusable garments, damaged, low quality. It is a mix, and it does shift some sorting and disposal and financial risk onto local actors. So it reveals a little bit about how the global north can externalize the consequences of cheap fashion while still framing donation and circularity as a social good. It also shows us that there are highly skilled, entrepreneurial, adaptive, and extremely creative people involved in the endpoints. It's not passive. There's a lot of labor that is involved to absorb excess, recover value, and manage a lot of the uncertainty that is happening with the chain right now. And I think over the past years, we're starting to see that the labor has limits, that the environment has limits. And as volume continues to increase and quality continues to decrease, places like Ghana help us to see that the issue is not just a waste management problem, but it's a structural problem of production, of trade, of responsibility and power. So Ghana is not just peripheral to the fashion system. It is a key player, and it's central to understanding how the system actually works, especially once we decide to let go of our clothing.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike,
Hello.
I'm going to ask you, hello. I'm going to ask you a very similar question. From your reporting, what is the reality on the ground looks like today? And have you witnessed any changes over the past years? And I'm going to share my screen for you so you can share some pictures. Basically, tell us what's going on in Ghana. What is it? The reality on the ground.
Brilliant. Well, let me start by saying that Ghana's secondhand clothing trade is widely recognized for its socio-economic benefits. It provides affordable fashion, no two ways about that. It's been a vital source of income for millions of people. But it is now being undermined by severe waste crisis driven by the fast fashion business model or phenomenon, if you like. Volumes are increasing, but the quality again continue to decline dramatically, thanks to the business model of fast fashion. Clothes are poorly made, damaged, stained, in fact, worthless, some of them worthless on arrival. They cannot be sold or worn, so they end up in these dump sites and even get to the protected sites. From the screen, you can see the Densu Delta Ramsar site. I visit there very often to document all the textile waste that's ending up there. There's a sign there that says protected area. Densu Ramsar site is an area of ecological importance, very much recognized. It is a Ramsar site, and as such, there shouldn't be any dumping, and yet you find a lot of textile waste in this particular area. It is a biodiversity hotspot, home to migratory birds, endangered turtles, the olive ridley, the leatherback, amongst others. But what do we find? Lots and lots of textile waste. On the screen again, there's a lot of desilting of the Korle Lagoon, but when you examine the silt that is being taken out from the bottom of this lagoon, you find layers and layers of textile waste. Meaning that over the years, the Korle Lagoon obviously have been polluted by textile waste. It's all over, littering our beaches, choking the drainage system, the gutters. They're almost everywhere. The fisher folk find it difficult to get fish. Each time they cast their fishing nets, instead of fish, they get clothes. We talk a lot about impact on fishing, but here again on the screens you find some livestock. That's a goat, yes. You know, these goats. In fact, these areas used to be grazing grounds, but these days there is nothing for the livestock to depend on. Rather, they would eat the clothes. Yes, I've seen a lot of them chew some clothes, but these clothes are synthetic, made of synthetic fibers. I mean, plastics, if you like. They don't break down, you know, and they'll stay in the environment for years to come. And of course, they would contain microplastics as well that can bioaccumulate, stay in the animal tissue. And of course, when humans consume these things, we get them in our bodies as well, where they would cause a wide range of diseases. So, yeah, so a lot of these dumps are overloaded, and yet we find lots and lots of textile waste ending up in these areas. As I mentioned earlier, they are synthetic fibers, non-biodegradable. They'll stay there for years to come. They are decimating these fragile ecosystems. And let me also mention that new dump sites are mushrooming, even in protected areas like the Densu Delta, which is internationally recognized again under the Ramsar Convention. Now, these wetlands are very important because of the enormous services that they provide.
Thank you.
But yes, well, I think I'm going too far. Okay, right. We'll take it again.
No, not at all. You're welcome to continue.
Right.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
Second part of the question, have you saw any changes across the years, or is it something that has always been like that?
Well, not much change. I haven't seen any change yet. I've visited these dump sites, the beaches over and over again. Even yesterday, 3 days ago, we had some heavy rains, and I was at these dump sites and, of course, some of the beaches, and nothing has changed. It's still the same old story, loads and loads of textile waste ending up enveloping these beaches and also ending up at the dump sites.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Binkley, I'm going to continue with you. From your perspective under the GUCDA, the Ghanaian Youth Clothing Dealer Association, how do you see the role of secondhand clothing trade in Ghana? And what do people often misunderstood about it? If at all?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One of the rules of the association is to create employment for the people of Ghana. So the secondhand trade has created 2 million employment for the people of Ghana. Economically, in 2022, the sector contributed 29.5 million to tax revenues. In the same year, the sector contributed $35 million to Ghana's GDP. Research commissioned in 2024 showed that the trade is a principal source of income for about 92% of retailers in Ghana. The trade provides affordable clothing for majority of Ghanaians because we depend so much for affordability and quality. The secondhand trade has mitigated carbon emission by extending the lifespan of secondhand clothing. And that is a plus for the industry. And one of the things that has been misunderstood is the claim that Ghana is a dumping ground for textile waste. And most of the times when they are quoting, they quote 40% of textile waste coming into Ghana. And these are misinformations that is out there. And you see, on average, if I should tell you, we have the real data in Cantonment. On average, about 55 containers come to Ghana. And if you say 40% of the 55 containers that come in are waste, it means that 22 containers that come in every week is waste. The business without these assumptions. And these are misinformation that the media is portraying out there that we need to look into. Research commissioned in Ghana showed that less than 5% of imported secondhand clothing are unsellable. And even with that some companies come to buy them, pick them for recycling, and then repair them for other things. And if I should show you some of the images that I picked up from the beaches on Monday, allow me to show you these images on Monday. What
we're seeing the Zoom screen.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see my screen.
No. We see the
okay.
We see the home screen, but not slides.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, but we don't see pictures. We see the joint meeting option. We see our browsers.
Oh, wow! Let me try it again.
Take another minute. Send me the slides or the picture that you wanted to share, and in the meanwhile, you can continue and tell us a little bit more, maybe about Ghana Used Clothing Dealer Association, who you are, because I'm not sure that everybody is familiar. So.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Anane said.
With Mike, and while you can tell us.
Mr. Anane. Okay, I'll send it to you later after the meeting.
You're a little bit cut out. Mr. Binkley, can you hear us? I think I'm going to move to the next question, and once we'll have Mr. Binkley with us again, then we're gonna go back to you. All right. It's he's disconnected for everyone, right? Not just for me. Okay. So I'm gonna shift a little bit to the policy angle, although we definitely know that there's some kind of discrepancy and around the issue of textile waste, and we know that while there's a broad agreement about the volume of the trade and the importance of the trade for Ghana economy, there is a very strong and passionate debate about the environmental implications and how much out of everything that is being imported is waste. And I think this question is in the heart of this subject. We're gonna go back to Mr. Binkley once he'll settle his internet. But I want to shift a little bit to the policy angle, especially with the discrepancy and with the misunderstood aspect or the unknown aspect of this trade. And I want to direct my next question to Judith and Hobson. So my next question, Judith and Hobson, how is the issue is currently being approached, and where are the main gaps? And Judith, we can start with you from a policy perspective. How is the issue is currently being approached and addressed?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So from a policy perspective, the secondhand clothing trade sits at the intersection of trade, waste, and sustainability policy, but it's not fully governed by one of these areas. So to understand it, like Anika mentioned earlier, it's important to situate it within the scale of the global fashion system. So today, the industry produces around 100 billion garments annually, with production having doubled in the past 2 decades, but to be specific, in the year 2000, between the year 2000 and 2020, production has doubled. While garments are worn fewer times, yet only 1% is currently being recycled into new clothing. And even though we may not have the exact data of what ends up as waste, what we know is that majority of this clothing end up as waste. That's a fact. So in many global north contexts, policy has focused on collection and reuse, positioning secondhand clothing within circular economy strategies. However, once garments are exported, they largely fall outside the scope of these frameworks. And this sort of creates a disconnect. So where we have, clothing is counted as reused at the point of export, but there is limited accountability for what happens to it downstream, particularly in importing countries like Ghana. And what we see in Ghana reflects this clearly. While there is a strong and thriving reuse economy, which is supported by traders, repair systems, and local markets, even institutions, there is also a significant portion of imported clothing that is not reusable and ends up as waste. And at the same time, there is currently limited formal infrastructure for separate textile collection and processing. So the challenge is simply not, and I agree with Anika on this, the challenge is simply not one of the local waste management, but also how global systems are interacting with local capacity. So this is where some of the key policy gaps emerge, especially around responsibility. So we have importing countries left to manage the environmental and infrastructural impacts of textile waste, while producers and exporting systems are not fully accountable for those downstream outcomes. And what is interesting is we're beginning to see a shift in Europe. For example, new developments around the new EPR schemes, which is extended producer responsibility for textiles, aim to require producers to finance, the collection and the treatment of textile waste. We see similar conversations emerging in the UK as well. But as policymakers in Ghana have also highlighted, these frameworks need to account for the global dimension of the trade, especially when we consider that EPR remains nationally or regionally bounded, while textile flows are global. So this is where sort of like there is a gap in where the accountability is. So for countries like Ghana, EPRs like this may offer opportunities and risks. So on one hand, we have EPR helping to improve the quality of garments entering the secondhand system and potentially unlocking finances for infrastructure, such as the sorting, the recycling, and others. But on the other hand, if not globally coordinated, there is also a risk of shifting flows or creating an uneven regulatory landscape, if I make sense. So ultimately, where I'll just, as a concluding thought, the gap remains here. And this is it, where we are trying to govern a global system with largely national or regional policy tools. And until EPR frameworks meaningfully reflect the full geography of the secondhand clothing trade, including importing countries like Ghana, these gaps and accountability will continue to persist. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hobson, I want to move to the same question with you from Ghana EPA perspective and from your experience. How is this issue is currently being approached, and where are the main gaps?
Thank you very much. The opportunity. The issue that we are confronted with, I know per what we have in terms of data, about 30 to 40% of this material that comes into the country is considered waste. So one might think that maybe Ghana is being turned into maybe a dumping ground for Africa in total. There was an indication that yes, that is not the case. But I think we still need to look at the data again and then establish exactly what it is. But then it is obvious to all of us. I always say that if you go to our beaches, you don't need somebody to tell you that these materials in one way or the other finds themselves, out there, choking our gutters, causing a lot of floods around it. Flooding is becoming an issue, but you ask yourself, what is actually happening? You look into our open gutters, and then you see that it's fully choked with these materials. You go to our dam site, and you find a lot of textile waste among the other waste that we've been talking about. And it is something that we need to address, even though we recognize the fact that it is providing livelihood. If you go to Kantamanto, the informal sector, it has employed a lot of people. And like he mentioned, number of containers that comes in almost every week. And you can imagine in Accra, Kumasi, all the capital cities, there are people who depend on it. And I must indicate that we have used secondhand clothing, serve a very good purpose. Some of the quality is superb, and a lot of people patronize, not only for, the so-called poor, but then even for the middle class, they all participate in it. But then currently what we are confronted with is the challenge. And then how do we then address the issues? We have parties involved. The polluter pays principle demands that whatever activity, business, trade that you are engaged in, you need to also make sure you put certain things in place to be able to manage the residue or the waste that comes out of your operations. And that is where we are focusing on as government. To talk about what the responsibilities are. If you are a trader, it means you need to make sure you put the mechanisms in place to be able to collect the materials. And even if you want to do upcycling, you handle that. You should be able to collect data on the residue that comes out of your product so that we will not be debating about how much in percentage that is waste and what is good for our consumption. I think we need to also look at that. And of course, in doing that, the extended producer responsibility is there, that we need to participate, including the regulator. The producers must also come on board to support sustainability. That is why, if you look at the new law that was passed, that is the Act 1124, we have already made provision for the extended producer responsibility. But we still believe that that is not enough. We need to go ahead and come out with a policy. And the policy is going to be supported by a regulation. And then we can be able to put together certain laws that will mandate the actors to take up their responsibility. And in this case, we are saying that this should be a private sector led. And then, of course, there's going to be a little command and control system, because we are such that if you leave people to their fate, they can do anything that they want. But then, of course, that command and control bit will be there to support it. And that is currently what we are looking at. We have mentioned that, yes, textile waste is having an issue. We have environmental issue associated with textile waste. Of course, we need to recognize the fact that certain regulations also need to be in place to be able to address some of these issues that we are confronted with. And then we need to also ensure that those who are participating, in this case, the actors, take up responsibility. And that is exactly what we are doing. I know Landfill to Landmark, we have engaged them extensively to make sure we find a solution to some of these issues that we are confronted with. One has got to do with data. And we can only get the data when we are able to even track what is coming in. And then who is receiving what. And at the end of the day, how is the distribution like? And then the end user, because I am suspecting from all the indications that it's not even about how much we sell and the waste that comes out of it. But then when it goes to the final consumer and they also use it, at the end of its use, what happens? I think we need to also look at it. And then we have a system where waste is actually not segregated at the household level. And nobody is actually accounting for that because they think every waste is waste. You go to a typical household and then they are provided one waste bin and then they put it inside. In most cases, we have our culture. For me, normally when I have old clothes, I can hand over to a church that can donate it to maybe another organization, maybe an NGO or something. But then there are some, other people with different school of thought that they don't want to give out something that they have won to somebody. And therefore, the only thing that they can do is to put it in the waste bin. And then the service provider also picks it and it goes straight to our landfill site without any, treatment. And this is what we see around in most of the time. So I think we need to have a solution, and the solution is the extended producer responsibility. And then by doing so, there are some other mechanisms, which is, looking at keeping a lot of records among others to be able to, get it done as quickly as possible. And I can assure you, by close of this year, that policy will be in place. And then, of course, we go ahead with the regulation as well. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Already good news. Thank you. So just to echo you before we go back to Mr. Binkley, you're saying that the two main gaps within policy, one is about accountability and one is about data and data gathering, which I think is something that we can all agree as researchers, as policymakers, and as people who are interested in that. Mr. Binkley, I'm going back to you, and I'm going to share the slides for you just to let you finish your answer. You were talking about the misunderstood aspects of this trade.
Yes. In fact, when you go, I went to the beach on Monday to see what the media is portraying. And it will baffle your mind that when you go there, this waste looks like textile. But when you go closer to it, it's polythene bags, plastic polythene bags. That is why I wanted to show you so that you see. And the media keeps showing these as textile waste, waste. But it is plastic waste. Polythene bags. So I want you to play some of the videos for you to see. We pick them up and you see that it is colored polythene that are used as textile waste. And these are all colored polythene bags. When you zoom in from a distance, you see that it is textile, but when you get closer, you pick it, it is polythene. So these are some of the misinformation that is going on out there. We are not saying that clothing doesn't have end of life, as Hobson was saying. Every cloth, whether brand new or used, has its end of life. So what we can also do is that to expand textile sorting and recycling, which can boost material recovery. And we all buy into that because every clothing has its own lifespan. So the misinformation out there is very critical to our industry. So as Hobson also said, we need to critically come down, not to always look into the 40% that people are claiming to be. Come down to the ground and see for yourself if it is really 40% or otherwise. We commissioned a research in 2024, which is 5%, less than 5%. And when you go to our landfills, the least waste you can find there is textile. That is the least. It's textile, but it becoming alarming that textile waste has consumed the people of Ghana, that we don't have any place to manage it. But the waste issue about Ghana is a general waste management issue that we need to come together to find the right solution to curtail the general waste management issue in Ghana. And I don't think it's only in Ghana. In other places in Europe, in US, everywhere, there's a waste management issue that we need to globally find solution to it. But what we can also say is that fast fashion is taking chunk of is contributing chunk of this waste issue. The ultra fast fashion overproduction, as Hobson said, is causing a lot of damage than good. So the circular economy without secondhand clothing, we can see that fast fashion will take over the markets. And secondhand clothing is not competing with local manufacturers. It's competing with fast fashion. And that is why when you come to Ghana, people prefer to buy secondhand clothing than to buy fast fashion, because Ghanaians, before a Ghanaian would dispose of a cloth, it takes a very long time. So prolonging the lifespan of clothing is key to Ghanaians. That is why they prefer to buy secondhand clothing. And in secondhand clothing, you'll find a certain kind of fabric that is once in a million. You will not see it anywhere. When you buy it, it's yours forever. You will not see it anywhere. And that is why many Ghanaians patronize secondhand clothing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's actually a very good segue to the next question, because I want to open it to everybody. What are the misunderstood aspects of secondhand clothing trade in Ghana? We see that we have some disagreements, and most of us is looking at this situation from the outside. So I want to ask all of you, all of our great panelists, what are the misunderstood aspects, especially from an international perspective, regarding secondhand clothing trade in Ghana? Judith, let's start with you.
Okay. I personally, I think even through my work, I think one aspect that has been consistently misunderstood is the idea that, in terms of, because my work has been on the waste aspect of it, is the idea that it's primarily one of the local waste management problem, and that countries like Ghana simply lack the infrastructure to deal with textile waste. And there's a truth to that. While infrastructure is a part of the problem or a part of the picture, the challenge is fundamentally systemic. And until we are able to view it from that angle, we can't do much about what we're saying. So this is a system that is shaped by overproduction, declining garment quality due to the rise of fast fashion, and the scale at which clothing is exported through global secondhand systems. So what we're seeing is not just a local issue, but the downstream effects of a global production and consumption model. And because it's a system level issue, it requires a system level solution, one that is coordinated, integrated, and also designed across the value chain, rather than producing solutions in silos. And if we continue to focus primarily on local capacity without addressing upstream drivers, we will keep producing the same challenges, because ultimately the scale of global fashion system far exceeds the capacity of any single supporting country or any single importing country to be able to absorb the waste. And this is where accountability becomes critical. So through mechanisms like the EPR, so that responsibility that responsibility can be shared across the value chain rather than concentrated at the point where the impact is more visible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anika. Anika.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Judith said, and building upon that is that this is a global problem and we apply systems thinking and everyone always talks about it, but it's that we also need systems thinking involves multiple intervention points, and considering all stakeholders and how even a local decision will have impacts and reverberate globally. So while solutions in Ghana need to be local, grounded, and context specific, we also need to think of how solutions in the global north or places in North America where I do my research, how when we are implementing policy or thinking about recycling infrastructure, donation and those flows, what are we doing here, how it's going to impact those places as well. And that oftentimes ideas of bans and these come up, and the repercussion of that when there are livelihoods, and not everything that goes is bad, and there's some bad and there's some good that goes there. There's positive and social and negative impacts of these flows. So how do we emphasize and grow the good impacts, and then how do we try to reduce those negative impacts in thinking locally at the same time in both places, but how those are enacted globally when we make those decisions.
Thank you. Mike, same question. What are the misunderstood aspects from an international perspective regarding the
Well, for me, I think the influx of textile waste is just a way to externalize costs. The developed countries are just using that as an avenue to externalize costs. They should be told and held accountable and liable, for the impact that textile waste is causing to our environment, our dam sites, fragile ecosystems, and the Ramsar sites. EPR schemes would make a lot of difference. There should be a way of funding cleanups here. And of course, the brands should pay for that. I have seen youth-led efforts aimed at transforming the textile waste from waste opportunity at Kantamanto and these other places through upcycling, repair, and so on and so forth. In Ghana, of course, the All Foundation, the Revival, and quite a number of organizations are doing their best, to try and tackle the problem. But looking at the volumes of imports, these efforts are being drowned, if not dwarfed. So definitely the brands would have to be responsible, deal with the textile waste in their country and not send them over. Because Ghana has not got the infrastructure to properly recycle or deal with textile waste. More so when they are laden with synthetic fibers that would not break down and will stay in the environment for a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Yara, we're very happy to have you with us. I saw your comment in the chat. In general speaking, all of our speakers, you're more than welcome to address the comments in the chat. There's plenty of comments. Hobson, I wanna address the same question to you. Are there any misunderstood aspects coming from an international perspective regarding this secondhand trade? Anything that we don't necessarily understand or should understand better within this story?
I would say the missing link over there is the fact that currently, the producers are not actually participating as expected.
Mm.
They bring us the goods. Those involved also go for it. Anyhow, they do their trade. But then, like I indicated earlier, that aspect or that responsibility that is expected of them is not being felt. And I think that is what we need to do together. Because I always say that environmental issues has got its own externalities. And you know, recently, Cote d'Ivoire is on Ghana, and they are saying that they want to take us to court and pursue environmental justice for the fact that we have polluted our water bodies, and then eventually it has also polluted their water bodies around. So they want some justice in that aspect. The same thing, if we pollute our beaches, it has its own externalities. So whoever is trading in the UK, in the US, China, anywhere, the sea, in one way or the other, runs through, and then the deep sea, in this case, also receive a lot of these materials. And you ask yourself, it doesn't, it's not limited to only Ghana, but therefore, it's something that we need to look at it, critically. That gap of not the producer participating is something that we need to look at and bridge that gap. And once we are able to do that, and we are able to also come out with the responsibilities for the various actors, I think we'll be able to chart a good path. With me, the argument about where the materials is coming from and then the data, that aspect, I've already indicated that, yes, we need to look at the data. We need to have accurate data that is evidence-based, because there is a picture that is showing textiles. There is another picture from different angle that is also showing a lot of plastic waste. And to be honest, if you go to the beach side, you find a lot of plastic waste over there. That is also not to lose the fact that we have a lot of textile waste also at the beach. In the first place, it's not supposed to even end up there, but we are finding it there, which means that we need to find a way to go around it. The extended producer responsibility that we are coming out with is not only going to look at the textile waste only. We are looking at plastic. We are looking at electronic wastes, among others, so that we can be able to find a holistic solution that addresses our waste issues. And I know we have been reporting at the UNFCCC on waste management. And I think now that at the global level, textile waste is developing a lot of concern. And we are all trying to find a holistic solution. It will be good for us to do more research, for us to come out with a lot of evidence that will speak to the subject. And then the shifting of blame here and there would also, or minimize. Of course, nobody does business and expect that at the end of the day, they will throw a lot of these materials that they have used money to buy out. But then the fact of the matter is that, in a way, these materials find themselves or how they come inside there. Even if it's about 2%, about 10%, it's still significant. We still need to look at it. Even if we are finding even 1% at the beach, it's still not good enough. So we need to find a solution to that. And I think we are stakeholders over here. And then this platform that we have already started, engaging one another, we should, engage further. We should be able to come out with solutions that will address the issues. And then we from the, we need to also make sure that we do as expected of us and come out with a regulation that will stand the test of time to allow, service providers like landfills to landmark, even the associations themselves, those who are engaged in the trading, to participate so that we can actually address the environmental aspect, which we have issues with it. And aside that, business run as expected. And if you're able to eliminate waste from it, then it means we are good to go. and then we are on our way towards sustainability. And that is what we are all expecting.
Maybe this is the beginning of an expert committee or stakeholders committee to establish the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Binkley, I know you already answered that when you talked about the misunderstood aspects, but is there anything you want to add before I move on to the next question?
Yes, there are people who doesn't know that the goods that we bring in are sorted, well sorted. And let me tell you something about Ghana. Ghanaians like fashion, and their tastes and preferences keep changing over time. And as association and importers, what we do is that anytime the taste of preferences of Ghanaians change, we need to also change the way we sort the items at the sorting centers. So, our customer base are people who they keep changing the way they do their things and the way they wear clothes. So we also keep changing what they want. So we are always on the sorting centers to give them the best quality that they need. And one of the things that we are not talking about is that reuse is a key pillar of the global circular economy. And as in every bill represents diversion from landfills or incinerators. So reuse is the solution to textiles moving from manufacturing to the landfills. And to prolong the lifespan of clothing, reuse have to be encouraged and motivated. And as Hobson said, there's end of life to everything. And therefore, at the end of the lifespan of clothing, we will need a recycling facility to take care of the clothing. So these are some of the things we need to consider as industry players and as researchers. That's the solution to secondhand to textile waste is reuse. Secondhand clothing trade is one of the few circular industries that generates both economic and environmental value. Producing one clothes needs a lot of water to produce. And the trade is there to also bring in the solution of carbon emission. So we avoid so many things as as the circular economy thrives. So we have to encourage the circular economy, especially second-hand clothing trade. It brings in economic values and then environmental values. So these are some of the things we need to take into consideration when policies are made to take care of these waste issues.
Yeah. Thank you. As we're getting closer to the end of the webinar, we have another half an hour. I like to shift us slightly from production and system to questions about consumption, since this network is focusing on sustainable fashion consumption. So I want to pivot the conversation towards consumption. And since we're running out of time, I'm going to ask you two questions together, and feel free to choose what questions you want to answer or both of them. So my first questions to all of you is, how does what's happening in Ghana connected to consumption pattern in the global north? And what is the lesson regarding consumption? And my second question, and again, you can choose whether you want to answer both of those questions or just one of them. My second question, when we're talking about secondhand clothing, it's often framed as the solution, maybe even the perfect solution when it comes to sustainable fashion. So from your perspective, from your individual perspective of each one of you, where does this narrative hold regarding secondhand clothing, and where does it break down? Anika, we're going to start with you because I haven't heard you in a long time, and I'm curious what you think about it. So how is related to consumption, and what about this narrative of secondhand clothing being the perfect solution?
Yeah, there's a lot of false assumptions about it being the solution. We produce a lot. it would be great if we could put limits on production. I don't know how that would happen. It's very difficult to put these kinds of regulatory frameworks in place in global production networks. But what kind of happens with all of this excess production is the responsibilities then shifted onto waste management, in particular in Canada and the US, where I've spent a lot of time following these clothes around and landfills is um, the burden or what happens with our secondhand clothes or what happens with our clothes when we decide to get rid of it is then shifted onto municipalities who don't have a lot of say or money to deal with our clothes in the sense of textile waste because it's not even an official category, so they're not counting it. They don't really consider at what point it becomes textile waste. How do we monitor, capture any sort of data within reuse or recycling or waste management streams? Because the answer for most municipalities is to actually shift the burden then onto thrift stores and thrift organizations, for profit, not for profit. And they have a different responsibility that they're catering to. And secondhand clothes / textile waste kind of follows the path of least resistance. What is the easiest and cheapest way for me to get rid of this or manage with this? And it's expensive to landfill here. And because municipalities frame donation as recycling, as reuse, we're told like this is the best thing. This one then influences how we consume because when we know that there is an outlet that is, quote unquote, good, I'm donating it, this is going to go somewhere, someone's going to use it, it's going to get recycling. The reality is, as Judith pointed out, it doesn't get recycled. Very little. We don't have the infrastructure. It's not coordinated. If we have technologies, again, it needs to be coordinated through infrastructure. So it doesn't, right? And it ends up just kind of following this path of least resistance until it ends up being exported out. And a very unpopular opinion is that we should just throw it out, but we should throw it out here. Like if this is something that you no longer want and you don't think someone else wants it, don't donate it. Throw it in the garbage where it belongs because at least we are taking responsibility for our own waste here. No one ever likes to say that, but the reality is we don't have any other solutions. The solution is that it does end up on a beach somewhere if it is unwearable or unusable. And if you can't repair it or it's not in any condition for someone else to wear it, it's different if you just don't like it anymore. But if you're getting rid of it because you don't think it's a good garment to wear anymore for various reasons such as stains or repairs, then maybe it actually is better to landfill where we can manage it here and we're paying for it here. In the absence, as Judith pointed out, these larger global responsibilities and accountability gaps and issues with all of these frameworks, it's just coming in so much and so quick, all of these clothes. And with these narratives of secondhand clothes and donation and all of it being good, it just kind of gives us a license to consume more. And even though people are even consuming secondhand clothes more, they're consuming it at the same rate that they would fast fashion. And also then cycling through. So I think oftentimes while we want to imagine that people want to do the best and responsible thing, oftentimes it's just what is cheapest and easiest to do. And that's what I've seen by visiting sorting houses here, going to landfills everywhere else. Landfill managers, engineers here would love to deal with textile waste in a more responsible way, but if there's nothing coming down from the top or there's no finances or capital or any sort of incentive, they aren't. And that's just what keeps happening is it just the infrastructure that's in place, the flows that are in place right now are the easiest and the cheapest, and we just keep following those. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Very important thoughts. Thank you. Mike, I'm gonna ask you the same question. How is all of that linked to our consumption patterns in the global north, and what is your perspective on secondhand clothing being framed as a wonderful, perfect solution?
Okay. Well, overproduction, fast fashion, synthetic materials in a society that would wear these clothes just for a little while and discard them, that is definitely a tough one. However, consumers definitely have a role to play. And that is to say, for instance, if you don't, you are not in need of the clothing, I mean, why would you go and get them? You know, so yes, consumers have a role to play in dealing with the issue of textile waste. When it comes to the second part of the question, yeah, secondhand clothes over the years have played an immense role in terms of the benefits to the Ghanaian society, for instance. But as I indicated earlier, in recent times, it's been undermined, you know, by fast fashion and then the textile waste that we see all over the place. Yes, but I believe that we can get it right, you know, if we tackle the issue of overproduction, the complex blend of fibers, particularly the synthetic fibers. You know, yes, I believe we can get somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Binkley, do you want to take this question? What is your perspective?
I want to talk about the consumption aspects, the consumption pattern. You know, in the global north, the fast fashion and ultra fast fashion are sticking the markets. And therefore, the production of these materials are not durable. And therefore, you use it few days and you have to dispose it off. And it's posing a serious challenge in the industry. But to talk about second-hand clothing in Europe, according to Oxford Economics, it provided 110,000 people employment in Europe. And in 2023, it contributed to 3 billion euro to GDP. So fast fashion in Europe has dominated the market so that many people are consuming fast fashion than second-hand clothing. And we are not promoting reuse enough. And if care is not taken, our landfills will be choked, our drainage systems will be choked. And if you don't advise them to use the right materials for production, and we cannot even have a sustainable recycling facility to take care of fast fashion and production. And this is a critical issue we need to look into to curtail the issue of clothing ending up at the landfills. Prolonging the lifespan is key to preventing so many materials ending up in our drainage systems and our beaches. So these are some of the things we need to talk about and to take care of. Overproduction of textiles is key. And if some a quota can be given to brands to, you know, produce in a period of time, I think we can curtail the issue very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith.
Okay. Thank you, Metal. So I'll answer it in the two separate, like you're saying, the consumption pattern and then my perception on the second hand. So the scale of secondhand trade is the clothing trade is largely driven by consumption patterns, like the other speakers have mentioned. And when clothing is produced in high volumes and one shorter times and then discarded, so more like the linear form of what the industry is. But what enters the secondhand system is not just surplus clothing, is literally the material effect of the overproduction and the declining garments. And when garments are exported, they carry those dynamics with them, including items that are not always suitable for use. And in a research, this is more personal, but in a more research, recent research I conducted on my university campus, which just showed me that the average consumer in the global north does not actually know what happens to clothes they donate. So, and this is just a bit of in relation to what Anika said. They give it out to charities or to recycling companies, but they don't actually know what happens to them. A lot of these issues come up because and feel more like it's sort of disconnected from what they are because they do not live with the realities of the waste part of this issue of their consumption. And so what we see in places like Ghana is not an isolated issue, but a continuation of those consumption patterns playing elsewhere in the system. And this brings me to the point of which is more of like my work I'm doing through the landfills to landmark, where we're trying to connect those downstream realities back to upstream actors, including brands, exporters, importers, local actors within even Kantamanto market itself, so that the decisions around production, quality, the responsibility are informed by what is actually happening in receiving markets. And ultimately addressing this challenge requires looking beyond local outcomes and engaging with the upstream drivers, and I believe significantly driving an education sort of thing for global north consumers, because the average consumer has to know the implications of their consuming habits when it comes to clothes. And secondly, to the question on secondhand often being framed as a solution. This is not like I like Edward's point on, it's important, I believe it's important to be able to approach this carefully, because the secondhand clothing trade does play a meaningful role in extending the life of garments, improving access to affordable clothing, and supporting livelihoods across many markets, including Ghana. And I feel like narrations have not actually across, in terms of even globally, have not really highlighted this aspect of it. But I also believe so in that sense, I believe the narrative holds. Reuse is an important part of a more circular system. But however, where the narrative falls short for me is when secondhand is positioned as a complete or a sufficient solution to fashion sustainability challenges, because it is still operating within a system that is defined by overproduction, overconsumption, and increasing rapid trend cycles. What we're seeing with fast fashion today is that sustainability cannot simply be achieved by using better fabrics or adding resale models if the system still depends on high volumes, short usage, or short use cycles, micro trends designed for obsolescence, then the underlying problem remains unchanged. Secondhand can absorb some of that excess, but it cannot keep up with the scale at which clothing is being produced globally. So the risk is that it becomes a kind of a moral buffer where continued consumption is justified by the assumption that clothing will be reused without addressing that structural diverse of waste. So secondhand is a part of the solution. I agree 100%, but it cannot replace the need to rethink how we actually produce and consume in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Hobson, if that's okay with you, I want to move to my very final question in the lack of time. So we'll have some time for questions from the audience. But I'm going to let you start with my next question. So to all of you, we have a metaphorical room full with researchers from all over the world. How can people who are interested in this topic and be more engaged with your work, and how can they collaborate with all of you? And Hobson, as I promised, I'm gonna start with you this time because I didn't let you answer the previous question.
All right. So thank you very much, Doc. I believe this conversation, as the various speakers have already indicated, consumption will continue to increase no matter what. And then we have a new generation that is so much into fashion and definitely is going to increase. The secondhand clothing, if you look at it carefully, is addressing a lot of issues. I mean, giving it a second chance to come to maybe Africa. Others are also, utilizing it. It expands its life. So it has addressed the issue to some extent, but then that is not the solution. The solution is to look at the various actors and then their responsibility. We already have, the SDG 12 talks about sustainable, consumption and production. How do we then reduce the waste out of it? How do we, make sure, we minimize the waste that comes out of our production. And then, of course, when we use it, how do we upcycle some of this material to give it a second chance to expand it among others? Producing with quality materials that will last for a very long time. So these are some of the thinkings that we need to look at, broadly to assist with the issues that we are confronted with. But then to come to the engagement aspect, how do we then mobilize our people, including the academia, the industry players? Those who are participating in terms of even those consumers. How do we then bring them together to address the issues? I believe it begins with awareness campaign. And I think this platform offers, the students, those who are, industry players to be part of this engagement. And I know with this, we can be able to, come out with some solutions to the challenges that we are confronted with globally. And then it will also shape the students. I am so much interested in the youth because that is the next generation. So this conversation will also shape their thinking in terms of how fashion is evolving and then the challenges that is associated with it and the need to deal with some of these issues. So I believe we need to continue to engage one another. We need to also look at the production itself and support them technically, because we can just say sustainable consumption and production. What does it entail? And there are some I know other companies are trying to do a lot of research about sustainability and they are doing, but I think we need to encourage a lot of companies. We need to provide the needed incentives to help this or to encourage these companies to look at the sustainability aspect of their production, among others. And then the consumers must also be aware that yes, what they are consuming at the end of its use has its own environmental or adverse impact on the environment, and the need to be responsible. If you come to Ghana, for instance, in our constitution, we have Article 41K that that says that we are supposed to be stewards of the environment, which means we equally have a responsibility towards the environment. Therefore, you need to also try as much as possible to do things such that your impact will not adversely, affect the environment as we are seeing today. So I think we will continue to engage. And I like, the aspects where the education starting from the students and also we moving towards the industry players by supporting them with the needed technical know-how to be able to do the things that will promote sustainability in the global world and Ghana as we are expecting. in the next coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very briefly, because we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to hear from all of you. How can people be engaged with you in the context of research and in general? And also for everybody participating in the webinar, I highly encourage you to engage via LinkedIn with all of our wonderful panelists, and we're gonna send their contact so you can continue the conversation with each one of them. So let's just go by the order. Mike, Judith,
Okay.
Mr. Binkley, and Anika, how can we be engaged with you? Mike?
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to point out that after such discussions, usually they are misconstrued. People think that speakers are asking for a ban of secondhand exports to Ghana, but I don't think that is the case. Well, at least I'm not doing that. I'm not asking for a ban. However, it is important to address the environmental cost. It is urgent for several reasons. First, the scale of production and consumption continues to grow. Global production has doubled since the 2000s, driven in large part by the fast fashion business model. Now, these impacts are not remote. They compound existing climate change, biodiversity, and public health challenges. Therefore, rethinking the fashion industry's production and consumption paradigms, for me, is not merely an ethical choice, but a strategic necessity for sustainable development. Okay, so when it comes to the engagement part of it, well, my LinkedIn page speaks volumes. I collaborate with a lot of agencies. I produce evidence-based facts, mostly on the ground, all over the place when it comes to textile waste and the waste trade in general. So we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Judy?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, one of the most important things in terms of my research is for it to be grounded in the realities of the system I'm trying to understand. So there's still a huge data gap when it comes to this problem and this issue, especially in relation to Ghana. And this is something that we're trying and we're actively working on, because especially when it comes to downstream data that reflects what's actually happening. And in terms of the work I'm doing with landfills to landmarks, so we have this traceability tool called the CREM Exchange. I believe students can look into this, where we're focusing on turning downstream data into upstream accountability. So the platform tracks what happens to imported textiles once they enter the receiving markets, from imports through traders, retailers, all the way down to the end of life. So that's the goal we are trying to achieve, to be able to collect that data downstream. And this is important because most existing systems track production or retail, but very little capture what happens after export. And by filling that gap, we can generate that kind of evidence needed to be able to even inform EPR frameworks, ESG reporting, and more accountable decision-making across the value chain. And alongside this, there's also a project we're piloting with the Ghana Youth Clothing Dealers Association, where retailers can call the buyback scheme. Retailers can return unsold textiles through a structured, verified process. This helps to generate data on the volumes, in terms of the volume, the material flow, and even brand presence in the waste stream, so that we see how many brands or what brands are actually contributing to more waste, for us to be able to know how best to work with them. And the Landfills to Landmarks has an event coming up in Ghana. It's from the 18th of May to the 22nd of May, and that will be, like I mentioned earlier, trying to collaborate with upstream and downstream stakeholders to be able to work on solving some of the issues we have. If you're in Ghana, you can attend in person, but you can also follow it online. So you can check out this information on the Landfills to Landmarks website. But ultimately, I think stronger collaboration between researchers, practitioners, and policymakers is key. And there's a lot of gatekeeping, also in terms of trying to. It's been a challenge for me. There's been a lot of in terms of the political aspect of things. I believe it would help a lot if we can be able to work together, and because this is to the benefit of everybody. We're not doing it for ourselves. It's to be able to, to be able to describe the problem, but also contribute to building more transparent, accountable, and equitable systems for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said.
Mm.
Mr. Binkley, how can we engage with you?
Yeah, our doors are open. The Ghana Youth Clothing Dealers Association doors are open to researchers. They can come in anytime to do their research, and anything that they need from us, we will try our best to give to them. And we need a research-based policies, not research or quoting misleading statistics that has dubious origins. So we welcome everybody who wants to conduct research in this industry. All the researchers that know me can testify that my doors are open to all of them.
Definitely.
And they call me midnight, anytime they want, and my doors are open. So we want to encourage researchers to come down to the ground, see for yourself what is on the ground, and you can bring out a good report for policy. And that is what we expect from researchers. Thank you.
I can testify from first source that that each and every one of our panelists, when I approach them and I ask for help, each one of you helped me without any questions. So thank you again, and I highly encourage everybody to do it. Anika, last but not least, any final words before I wrap it up?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I welcome collaboration of any kind. I work mostly with industry and stakeholders from all over, because I think what has been so beautiful about this panel is highlighting how complex and nuanced this issue is. There's no right or wrong answers, quote unquote. Everyone has brought up such valid and important thoughts and perspectives that need to be taken into consideration. And a lot of what I do is trying to engage with all of those as much as possible to try and understand how we can make better decisions at a local scale. How can we hyper locally recirculate as much as possible? And how do we find solutions at a small scale and go horizontally instead of scaling up? Everything is always about scaling up. How do we scale up recycling and all of those? But it really just happens at small scale with us because it is so dependent on our own contexts and perspectives and abilities and what we can do. And the solutions are not always going to be the same everywhere, but the intentions can be very similar. So that's always what I'm interested in, and engaged and happy to talk with anybody.
Thank you. Mike, you wanted to add something
Yes.
else?
Well, I just want to find out from Mr. Binkley why traders, would purchase these bills for between $200 to $300 without knowing the exact content.
Let me stop you because it is a very interesting conversation, but I also want to finish on time. And
okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I know. But just like I encourage everybody to continue this conversation beyond this webinar, it goes the same way. And I think this might be a wonderful start of the third committee. There's knowledge and complexity around this issue, and hopefully that would be a start of another conversation. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I know you didn't have time for questions. We didn't have time for questions from the audience, but please join our LinkedIn group, which is called the Sustainable Fashion Consumption Research Network. You're more than welcome to continue asking questions there, and I know that our wonderful panelists would love to answer there, as well as through their own LinkedIn pages and their email accounts. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. We're gonna send all the details and the link for the and the link for this webinar. Thank you.